A Delta assault team stacked on a darkened doorway, seconds from the breach. 6 men in full kit, weapons up, ready to flow. Every one of them knows the layout of the building behind that door. Every one of them knows the position of the target inside it. Every one of them knows the rotation of the guards on the floor above and the dog on the floor below, and the security camera in the stairwell that has been broken since November. Not one of them found any of it. Most people believe Delta Force hunts its own targets. Most people are watching the wrong half of the operation. Delta has never once, in the documented history of the unit, found a target on its own. The address on every door Delta has ever kicked has been handed to them by another unit, a unit the public has rarely been allowed to name, a unit that has changed its cover identity so many times that even Special Operations veterans lose track of what it is calling itself this year. Without that unit, the most famous direct action force in the American arsenal is a blade with nothing to swing at. The unit stood up in 1981, the year after the failure at Desert One. The Pentagon called it the Intelligence Support Activity. The unit has called itself, depending on the decade, Centra Spike, Gray Fox, and Torn Victor. Stay to the end for the system that picks every door Delta Force ever kicks, and subscribe now, because the units we cover next are the ones the algorithm keeps quiet. The story of the Intelligence Support Activity starts with the worst failure of Charles Beckwith's career. Operation Eagle Claw, April 24, 1980. The American attempt to rescue 52 embassy hostages from Tehran. The mission burned in an Iranian desert before it ever reached the city. 8 Americans died at Desert One. The Holloway Commission that investigated the disaster cataloged the small mechanical failures and the weather problems. The list of small failures, however, sat on top of a larger structural failure that the Holloway Commission did not bury in a footnote. The structural failure was the absence of an American human intelligence presence on the streets of Tehran. Delta Force, on the night of April 24th, had the operators. It had the equipment. It had the plan. It did not have a single American operative inside the Iranian capital who could tell the planners where the hostages were being moved, what the night cycle looked like outside the embassy compound, or what the actual layout of the embassy interior was after 6 months of occupation by the hostage takers. The unit was, in the most literal sense, blind. The Central Intelligence Agency had run station officers in Tehran before the revolution. After the embassy seizure, those officers were the hostages. The agency had no remaining presence on the ground inside Iran. The American government had spent decades building a Cold War intelligence apparatus oriented at Moscow. It had not built an equivalent capability to put American operatives inside a hostile capital in the developing world on short notice. Desert One ended. The Holloway Commission filed its report. The Pentagon read it. And someone in the building decided that gap could not happen again. In 1981, less than a year after Desert One, the Pentagon stood up the unit that would close the gap. The new unit was activated under a deliberately bland title, the Intelligence Support Activity. The Pentagon's planning paperwork before the activation had used a different cover name, the Foreign Operating Group, often shortened to FOG. The men inside the unit, then and since, have simply called it the Activity. The Activity's mission was unambiguous. Put American military intelligence operatives onto the ground in any country the United States might one day need to operate in, before the operation was approved, before the operators were briefed, before the helicopters were tasked. The new unit's job was to make sure that the next time a direct action force boarded an aircraft for a foreign city, the address of the target had already been confirmed by a man who was sitting in a coffee shop 2 blocks from it the day before. The Activity exists, in formal terms, as a tenant unit under the United States Army Intelligence and Security Command, although the operational tasking runs through the Joint Special Operations Command at Pope Field. The unit's selection is documented, in outline, by Sean Naylor and other reporters who have followed the special operations community over decades. The selection draws from across the American military, with emphasis on Army Special Forces, Tier 1 candidates, with language skills, and intelligence specialists who can carry a cover identity for extended periods under genuine pressure. Training runs through tradecraft, surveillance, surveillance detection, foreign area expertise, signals intelligence collection, and the discipline of working undercover for weeks at a time in a foreign capital without breaking cover. The graduates do not wear unit patches. They do not carry identification that names the unit. Their service records, inside the Pentagon, list them as belonging to administrative cover commands. The product of that selection is the operator the Pentagon sends to look at the building before Delta is sent to enter it. The activity has been doing that work, in some form, for 44 years. The doctrine that organizes how the activity supports a direct action unit has a short name inside the Joint Special Operations Command: Find, Fix, Finish. The phrase is not a slogan. It is a description of the three-stage sequence that runs every Tier 1 operation. Each stage belongs to a different part of the command, and each stage takes a different unit to complete. Find is the activities stage. It begins long before the operation is approved. An operative is inserted into the country under a cover identity that may be a businessman, a journalist, a technical consultant, a teacher, or any other role that allows him to walk the same streets the target uses. The operative collects. Signals intelligence intercepts feed into the picture from above. The activity has its own signals capability, run on equipment small enough to fit inside a rented apartment or a vehicle. Human sources are recruited slowly, vetted carefully, paid quietly. The cover identity is maintained for as long as the find phase requires, which can be days, weeks, months, or years. Fix is the bridge between find and finish. Once the target has been located, the activity narrows the picture. The exact address, the exact rooms used, the exact times of day the target is reliably at the address, the exact composition of the security around him. The activity does not run the assault, but the activity feeds the assault planner everything the planner needs to design it. The mock-up of the building that the assault element rehearses on at Pope Field is built from data that came in across the find and fix phases. Finish is Delta's stage, or DEV Group's stage if the target is in the maritime domain. The assault team arrives. The breach happens. The room is cleared. The target is removed. The whole finish phase, in most operations, takes between 30 seconds and 10 minutes. The find phase that preceded it took months. The fix phase that bridged them took weeks. The split between the two communities is permanent. The activity finds. Delta finishes. Neither replaces the other. The activity has another habit that distinguishes it from any other unit in the American arsenal. It changes its name. The Pentagon does not call the unit by its formal title in operational paperwork. The unit operates under a rotating series of cover designations, established for specific deployments, deactivated after the deployment, and replaced for the next one. Each cover name has appeared in the public record long after the fact, usually in books written by reporters who have spent decades inside the community. The names are not classified in the conventional sense. They are simply not used outside the building unless someone has gone to the trouble of writing a book. The first cover name was Centra Spike. The unit deployed under that designation in the 1980s, working signals intelligence collection against narcotics targets in Colombia. The Centra Spike effort included the technical support that, alongside other agencies, eventually located Pablo Escobar. Sean Naylor and others have written that history. The Centra Spike name retired when the deployment did. The unit later operated under the name Torn Victor. Then under Gray Fox, the cover most commonly associated with the activity's contribution to the early post-September 11th operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. Then, under other names that have not been published, or that have been published only in narrow professional contexts. The pattern is consistent. A name is established. The work is done under it. The name is retired. The next name picks up. The reason for the rotating cover is operational discipline. A unit that never lets its name attach to its operations is a unit whose name cannot be searched by a hostile intelligence service, cannot be cross-referenced against deployment records, cannot be tracked back to specific operators by family or by employment record. The opacity protects the operators. The opacity also protects the missions, because a target who knows a unit is on the ground in his city can change his behavior. A target who does not know what unit is even watching him cannot. The activity has been doing that disappearing act for 4 decades. The public has, by design, never quite caught up. This is the part the open loop pointed at from the start of the video. The reason Delta Force is, in the strict operational sense, dependent on the activity is that Delta does not, organically, possess the means to find its own targets. Delta is a direct action unit. The training pipeline, the budget allocation, the equipment, the deployment cycle are all built around the finish phase. The shoot house at Fort Bragg trains room clearing. The squadroning rotation trains assault readiness. The deployment posture trains rapid response. None of that training builds the months-long surveillance posture that the activity puts into a foreign city before any door is ever kicked. Delta does not, as a unit, embed officers under deep cover for 2-year tours. Delta does not, as a unit, recruit and run foreign human sources. Delta does not, as a unit, sit in a rented apartment for 14 weeks watching a target window with a long lens. Those skills exist in the activity. Those skills do not exist, at the operational depth the mission requires, inside Delta. The dependency runs the other way as well. The activity does not have the kinetic capability to finish what it finds. The activity's operators are not selected for room clearing. They are selected for the patience and the cover discipline that produces a target package. When the package is ready, the package has to be handed to a finisher. The finisher is Delta, or, in the maritime domain, the Naval Special Warfare Development Group. The 2 units, the activity and Delta, fit together. Neither one is the apex of the Joint Special Operations Command. Both are halves of an operational pair that the United States built specifically to ensure that another Desert One never happens. Delta provides the blade. The activity provides the eyes that point the blade at the right address. The blade without the eyes hits nothing. The eyes without the blade see clearly but cannot act. That is the answer to the question the title raised. Delta Force is the most famous direct action unit in the American arsenal. The activity is the unit that decides where Delta points. Here is the line that will fill the comments. Delta Force gets the documentaries and the movies, but a blade without eyes hits nothing, and the unit with no name is the one holding the map. Tell us below, who is the real tip of the spear, the unit that finds the target, or the unit that finishes it? If this opened a door you did not know existed, subscribe. This is exactly the kind of unit War Code exists to bring out of the dark.